of 12 and 16-inch shells for one of the metropolitan cities in California for their 4th of July fireworks show. So that was pretty cool. But we do a lot of fireworks import because, as you know, all the fireworks come from China. So they all come in on steamships. They all get drayed. Some of them get transloaded. Some of them get stored in warehouses for a while. It just varies. But probably the biggest thing I do, and probably my favorite thing that I do, is the projects. So I'll get somebody say, hey, I've got 50 or 100 containers coming in for this project I need help with, and we'll jump on it from there.
So on the out of gauge stuff that you were talking about, what's I know when we had a carrier on here from Charleston. I forgot what episode it was. Might have been 5, and he was talking about one of the out of gauge things he did was a big statue that was in a box. What do you have as far as interesting out of gauge stuff?
So I do a lot of helicopters. We have a lot of helicopters that come in from overseas, and we'll send a truck into the port, and they'll fly in a flight engineer, and they'll work hand in hand with the union crews, and they'll instruct them how to safely unload a $7 to $10 million piece of machinery to our truck, and then we'll secure it to the truck. Other things, I've picked up fire trucks for either import or export. A lot of machinery. I've done pharmaceuticals. That was probably one of the biggest things we did during COVID was pharmaceuticals, and that was very unique because of the nature of the product and having to keep it temperature validated and keep it cool. It was an interesting operation because we were doing anywhere from 40 to 70 containers a week.
I don't know those pharmaceuticals. What is it? The GDP they have to be certified with?
Yeah, you got to be GDP certified. If we're doing the direct drayage, it depends on the category of pharmaceuticals it is. There's some pharmaceuticals that have to be, kept at a certain range, and then there's some that absolutely have to be what's called T-val or temperature validated. And the temperature validated stuff, we have stuff inside the cab of the truck that monitors, and at the end of the delivery, we print out what's called a journey tape, and it shows like every 5 minutes what the temperature was on that shipment, and that is required to be turned in with the POD. So that's some pretty interesting stuff, and that's you imagine during COVID what was coming over. I did a lot of cancer drugs, actually. That was pretty cool to know that we had some small part in helping people fight their cancer. That was it was kind of made me feel good to know that we were helping people who truly needed help.
That's awesome. I love having conversations with people like yourself, Adam, that have both the brokerage side of it and the asset side of it, and that deal with drayage and the other avenues as well. Because a lot of brokers don't understand drayage, and they might have a customer that does dry van, or that has a customer that does flatbed, and they have a move for drayage, and the broker just gets a hold of it but doesn't understand. Right, 99% of, I shouldn't, probably close to 99% are usually a round trip move, right? Because the container comes out, it has to go back, either if it's loaded or unloaded, or empty or full. And a lot of, so when you're quoting it, a lot of brokers don't understand that part of it. They're looking at just the straight mileage and being like, oh, well, why, it's got to go back, right? So I'm sure you've probably experienced it on the broker side as far as carriers that don't know drayage but want to be a part of it and think that, because I've heard nightmare stories where the broker hasn't validated or vetted them to know that they don't have a scat code and they can't actually get in the port and get it, and they show up at the gate and want to figure out why they can't get in the gate and in the kiosk. So I always like talking to people that are on both sides of it, right? Because you get it, obviously, being in the business for this long and moving it around. What is your advice for people that, both from the broker side, that don't deal with drayage, that's looking to get into drayage?
Number one, please stay out of it. And I mean that
Let the
sincerely.
professionals handle it.
Let the professionals handle it. And I mean that sincerely. The three words I hate to see the most coming across from a broker in an email is all in rates. I want to convey to every person that is watching, all three of you, or who may watch this, there's no such thing as all in rates in drayage, right? It's just, it doesn't exist. And you sound so ignorant when you send me an email saying your best all in rates. Um, if you want to get into it, spend the time to learn how to do it right. Learn what accessorials are, learn what they mean, learn what the charges are, and develop relationships with carriers. Stop just sending out some blind BCC email blast list and taking the cheapest rate from the cheapest carrier, because you're not going to build a successful network that way. Sure, you may score some easy loads, right? But when the fit hits the shan, as they say,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to come back around. Those people who gave you those cheapest rates aren't going to be there for you, whereas your partner carriers that you may have developed will. And I would give that to all the new brokers coming into the big houses like TQL and Steam and IEL and those other big ones that reach out from time to time. Develop relationships with carriers. Don't just do email blasts looking for cheap rates.
Yeah, and somebody told me a while back too when I first got into this, and I don't use, from the carrier side of the business, I have really good relationships with the brokers that I use and that I work with, and I don't go on load boards very very much. And somebody always told me a lot of people going on load boards in the drayage world because they don't have relationships already, and they're going on there to try to find a relationship, or they're going on there to try to find the cheapest rate they can possibly get. But yeah, you get those all the time in the emails that come across. What's your best rate? What's your best rate? And I've talked about that from the beginning of this. I actually brought it up at the Broker Carrier Summit. The first one I went to in Tampa was, why does everybody just talk about best rate? Why does nobody talk about customer service, right? What's the best customer service you can give me? Because you know what? Know your worth. Your rate might be a little bit higher, but you're going to get it there, and you're going to get it there successfully versus somebody that's doing it dirt cheap. We call it cutthroat truckers. It's kind of our word for phrase for these people, and they'll quote it dirt cheap, but then if something else comes along that's a little bit better, they'll drop you in a heartbeat, and now all of a sudden you're struggling with last 3 days trying to get it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I've done some education to some of these brokers that have put me on blast lists before, and I've I might have been slow, so I shot a rate back, and they'll say, I may say, I can do it for $2.25 a mile plus fuel plus accessorials. Oh, can you come down to $1.80? And I said, no, that's below our operations costs.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't charity. This isn't a church. And I don't need the education lessons. I said, we're here to make a living. I'm here to keep my drivers running. I said, if you want somebody that's going to provide excellent service, get your work done the first time, and not give you problems, then it's worth the rates. And I've had one guy probably out of all of them come back and say, you know what, you're right. Let's work together. The rest of them, they're not interested. They probably have 10 or 15 people like me shooting it back saying the same thing. So it is what it is. But if I can encourage people, if they're new to it and they're serious about wanting to make a living, then be a professional and be an educated professional. Learn what you're doing, learn how to do it right the first time.
So kind of on that note, and we preach on this a lot, like if you're getting into it, make sure you know your shit. So like, what was your first experience with drayage like? Like how did you go about, the process of knowing all the information that you need to know, knowing the lingo and operating a profitable drayage operation?
So actually it's kind of strange. I had done a very little bit of drayage while my dad was still alive. And he had sold the first agency to another guy who was my dad had self-financed it. And the day after my dad's funeral, he notified my mom that he was not making any more payments, and he still owed a significant amount of money. But but he said, "Hey, just want to let you know that I'm not going to be making any more payments, and we're taking the business." So I obviously, being the eldest son, I stepped in and said, "Well, that's not going to happen." Unfortunately, he had managed to torpedo the vast number of customers we had. At one time, my dad had over 270 customers. Um, so I started from zero. I started reaching out to some of the freight forwarders that I knew and just saying, "Hey, this has happened. I'm stepping into this, trying to build this back up. What can we do for you?" And I started getting requests for drayage. And so I knew nothing about drayage like I know now. Like I didn't know what a chassis split was. I didn't know yard storage, yard pulls, any of that stuff. And so it was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of learning the hard way. Um, but I started to build it up and started to learn where I could, from who I could, networking with carriers, and just learning how to price it, and developed a nice book of business doing drayage that way. And Steve was talking about not using load boards. The only time I can think of in the last 5 years that I've used a load board is during COVID for drayage, when I just had more volume than I knew what to do with and had to go develop additional capacity. But other than that, none of my drayage freight hits a load board ever. I have contacts in every major city and every major port in the United States that I have a decade plus relationship with, and I just send it to them. And I might have two, maybe three in a city, and I'll send them all the quotes. And as long as they're all right within each other, I tend to use the same people over and over. And I'll try to split it up between them if I have volume, just to be fair, because I value those relationships and don't want to lose them. So in a lot of cities, I've gotten to where I just have one, maybe two, and usually the first one to get back to me with a rate and capacity is who gets it. It's not about a pricing game for me where I can make an extra $50, because I'm only making a certain percentage of that extra $50 anyway, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
not like I'm making a ton of money. So it's more about service for me, and I've got some great people that do excellent work and take good care of me, and I want to make sure that they're taken care of.
So it's funny when you mentioned like knowing your business, right? Knowing it before you get into it. So you learn, and I'm sure you did as well, right? Not knowing anything about drayage, you learn so much about drayage, and a lot of it's by trial and error.
Yeah.
And you'll get you get brokers all the time that'll, from the I'm speaking right now from the carrier side of it. You'll get brokers all the time that'll call you and be like, "Hey, container's available. When can you pick it up?" Okay, the container's not even, the vessel's not even here yet. No. The system shows it's available for pickup. When can you pick it up? Okay, the vessel is not here yet. Like, just because the customs documents have cleared and everything, paperwork is cleared, and it shows available for pickup in GoPort, doesn't mean that the container is actually in inventory. Unless you're going to pay me to put pontoons on my truck and go out in the middle of the ocean to pick this container up, you're not going to get it, right? But it's like they don't know all the systems. And that was one of the things I had to learn, because early on, I remember sending one of my trucks to the port to pick up a container. I was able to pin it. It said it was available for pickup. And this was before I learned, like we were talking about GoPort backstage. And you got the motor carrier section of GoPort, but you also got the public section. And
Mhm.
the motor carrier section will show you that container is available for pickup, but it doesn't show you if it's in inventory or not. So
Right.
I had to learn about the public side of it and learning about that piece of it, because I sent a carrier there with a PID number to pick up. And I'm on the phone with him as the solution centers at the guys on the other end saying, yes, sir, that vessel's not even here yet. Container's not here. And I'm arguing with him going, it's saying it's available for pickup. He goes,
Listen, bro, I got a PIN number right here,
yeah, I got
right?
a
That
PIN
says
number.
different. You don't know what you're talking
yeah,
about.
Yeah, how am I able to pin it something that's still in a vessel out at sea? And then I got educated on using the public thing of it. But, I think the more you know, right? And I think when you do touch both sides of it, both on the asset side, and on the brokerage side, it sets you up to be so much more successful in it. But there's always stuff to learn. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah.
and even like
That's
detention, right? And I'm sorry, I didn't even detention. Every steamship line has different amount of days. And a lot of brokers will just use a standard tool to say, 3 days. Hey, here's the last free day. No, if you actually call the steamship line, or some of them are actually on e-modal. No, this is actually the last free day. So a lot of times you're not even always getting the right information. And I think when you can provide that from both sides of it to your customers, it just takes you to a whole nother level from a customer service standpoint when you can truly give them accurate data and
oh,
accurate information.
100%, 100%, and not just that, but any value added service in drayage. I was going to say, I think drayage, quite honestly, is probably one of the most complicated modes of transportation because there is so much to know, from the aspect of accessorials to the aspect of the steamship lines, right? Like, you've got detention and demurrage on the steamship line, which means something completely different on the railroad, which means something completely different in trucking, right?
Mhm.
And you're like, well, what's detention or what's demurrage? Detention and demurrage are the same thing. No, they are not.
Mhm.
And it's kind of crazy how quickly it can build up. And um, the company we're agents for, they are very, very strict about who they'll let handle what's called ramp to ramp intermodal, because if you don't know that stuff, you can rack up charges really quick. You
Mhm.
let a container get buried in the stack,
Yeah.
and then it's sitting there for 30 or 40 days while they get it out, like, and then you've got $15,000 in demurrage and per diem and rail demurrage, and like, you're getting ready to swallow a big L, and there's nobody that's going to forgive that, because for the steamship lines and the railroads, it's all a money game, and they do not care about you, the broker.
So Tyler actually brought up define detention and demurrage for us.
Okay, so I often get these backwards because I still am kind of dumb and use demurrage and per diem, right? If I remember correctly, demurrage is when the container is in and sitting at the port.
Correct.
Once we pull it, you have free time until detention starts. And detention is when you need to return the empty to the correct location.
You got it right, sir.
Boom. Look at that. 2 points. So a funny story. During COVID, I had a container in Houston that we had transloaded and had the transloader return it for us, and they returned it to their yard, which was a drop location. It was an approved drop location, but apparently the steamship line wanted it returned to the terminal. But what I wound up fighting, I'm like, you let them return it to the yard. You gave them permission. We have the interchange right here. But they were trying to charge us $250,000 in detention
Holy shit.
because it had been sitting in the yard since August of the prior year. And I'm like, how do you not know where your box is? Like, you checked it in on interchange. It's in the computer system. You know where it's sitting. Oh, you didn't return it to the right location. You let them return it there. And so it ended up being, hey, listen, have them pick it up and take it back to the port, and we'll wipe this out. I'm like, consider it
You
done.
consider it done, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they had literally sent us an invoice for $250,000 in detention, and that's just how quickly something like that can go bad.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right empty return location as a broker, dude, you can get hurt quick. And I mean, it could wind up bankrupting your business. And so
Yeah.
that's why I say, if you don't know what you're doing, if you're not experienced, it's not being mean, it's not being a bully or trying to keep all the business for myself. I'm literally trying to give you some advice that will protect your life and your livelihood.
Oh yeah. So I'll leave the steamship line out of this for this story, but you'll pick up containers a lot of times, and I say a lot of times, but when they're getting ready to put that container out of service, you'll get an email that'll say, hey, it's not going back to the port, it's going here to Con Global or CMC, right? They'll tell you where to go, and they'll give you the code to get it in there. Well, I always charge a split chassis fee for that and I'd bill it to the steamship line. And I returned it like I normally did, and I had proof in the email, like, yeah, we can do this. Here's our split chassis fee, blah blah blah. Everything was approved. We bill the invoice and we send it over, and then all of a sudden I get a call from the accounting team that said, "Oh, we only pay this much for a split chassis fee," and it was half of what I was charging this. And I was like, "I don't give a damn what you pay. Like, you contracted me for a service. I got approved what I'm going to charge you. How can you dictate to me what you're going to pay?" Well, they did, and that's all that they paid. Well, then I found out afterwards that just because they recommend you take it to there, they can't force you to take it there. You can still return it back to the original depot in which you picked it up. So now I'm sure that particular steamship line now has to pay a lot more than what they were going to charge me in split chassis to get that now back out of the port.
It's a principle, man. It's the principle of the thing, right? They step over dollars to pick up dimes. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't care about being partners. Like, dealing with the steamship lines is quite honestly probably the biggest headache a drayage broker deals with on a day-to-day basis. And the freight forwarders are the same. If you have any relationships with your freight forwarders, they're telling you, "God, I fucking hate MSC."
Mm-hmm.
And it's just part of it, right?
Funny, you just mentioned the exact the exact one I was just talking about.
I'm not trying to be mean, but they can be very tough to deal with. But it goes back to what you were saying about being an advocate for your customer and being educated and knowledgeable. MSC has 4 days before detention starts, right? Whereas Hapag Lloyd, one of my personal favorites, love you, Hapag Lloyd has, I believe it's 4 working days.
Right. They don't count Saturday or
depending
Sunday.
on the forwarder.
Mm-hmm.
So, MSC, your Saturday and Sunday counts. Hapag Lloyd, your Saturday and Sunday do not count.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to know that stuff when you're trying to schedule deliveries and schedule which containers you're going to pull first and deliver first and yard pull and stuff of that nature. And then on top of that, there's steamship lines that their websites are amazing. ONE, I love you.
Amazing.
Chef's Kiss, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
HMM, Chef's Kiss, thank you. I can pay demurrage right online.
Oh yeah.
And when you've got a giant freight forwarder that might have $1,000 in demurrage, and they have to get approval from accounting and get somebody with a credit card, or to issue a payment that might take 24 hours, and it costs them an additional $300 or $400. Whereas I come in there and I'm like, "Hey, look, value added service. I'll pay this on my credit card.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have it instantly cleared. We'll go pick it up right now. I'll charge you the cost of the demurrage plus an additional 10% for my time."
Mm-hmm.
The number of forwarders that will jump on that.
Oh yeah.
And the relationships you build, not only by saving them money, but having a solution ready right there. Dude, I can't tell you enough. That's the smart play, to constantly and always be an advocate and be a value add for your customers.
Yeah, we were doing that as a carrier before we were even on the broker side of it, because a lot of these, and you just mentioned a couple really good ones that are also in e-modal as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
MSC, Maersk, some of these other ones are not. So they make, you can't even, you can go into OEN and CMA and some of these ones, and you can literally go in there in e-modal and boom, last 3 days are there. You can pay you can pay everything you need to right in there, and it's so handy and it's so convenient. But yet some of the other ones, their website sucks to be able to get the information. You almost have to call or email. Like I have a ritual where I will literally email first, and I always copy the terminal, the solution center or whatever for the particular terminal I'm in, because one tries to always play it against the other one.
Mm-hmm.
So I always,
it's so and so's fault. Oh
yeah,
we're not going to have second shift today because there's not enough volume. Dude, come on, give me a break.
So I include the steamship line and the terminal together in the email, so they can't pass the buck against each other. But then I've realized that the first thing I do is I'll send an email so that I have a ticket number. Once I get the ticket number, I'll then pick up the phone and call them, because now I got a ticket number, and it's going to take them 5 hours before they even respond to the email anyway, and I can usually get somebody on the phone. But it's interesting. It's there's a lot of juggling, and people, if you don't know it, you can get, like you said, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble either by not returning stuff. There's a lot of money that comes with drayage and comes with this, that carriers and brokers don't know when they get into it.
You were talking about e-modal. I really wish that the federal government would step in and require all of the steamship lines to be an e-modal. I think that there needs to be some adjusting to international trade in the United States, and that should be one of those requirements. They personally, I think they need to streamline the detention and demurrage schedules, and it needs to be the same for all steamship lines across the
Agreed.
board.
You have my
And
vote for
then,
president, Adam.
and then of course, chassis choice. I, um, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that if I have a track chassis, but the steamship line partners with DCLI, that I can't take that track chassis in there and pick that container up. But they may not have any DCLI chassis available for 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, my customer is eating that demurrage. And it doesn't sit well with me.
Well, and you almost wonder, I mean, because MSC, I believe, I'm not mistaken, they just went down a day on their detention, like just recently, within this year, on the days that they allow.
It doesn't
But
surprise me.
a lot of this is, it's purposely, again, my opinion. Don't take this to the bank. And the opinion of, I forgot what the thing says on the lounge.
Don't sue us.
Yeah, the opinion, sue the person that, this is just my opinion. This is not affiliated, but I think a lot of it is purposely driven to drive income. I think they
it's
take,
100%.
when they're sitting there having those conversations and having those meetings as they're planning out their budgets. I mean, there's a certain percentage that's budgeted in for detention and demurrage and all this other nonsense that if they see that start slipping, they have to adjust to make sure that income still comes in.
So let's just be honest. There's a reason MSC is the biggest out there, right? MSC is the biggest out there because they offer the cheapest ocean rates. And where they make up their money is on the back end, just like LTL carriers.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to make it up in accessorials. They're going to make it up in demurrage and detention. And I've seen email chains 100 emails long trying to get in touch with somebody in the detention and demurrage department to get a demurrage calculation so that a payment can be made.
Mm-hmm.
So, but people keep using MSC. Why? Because they've got the best rates and they have fairly decent service over the ocean. It's just their customer service kind of sucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a few people that I can get to there that, I mean, they'll bend over backwards to assist. But man, a lot of them, they'll transfer you around 100 different times and you'll wind up right back to the same person that's like, oh yeah, I forgot I actually could help you. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, that's we were talking about some of the others, and I won't pit them against each other, but there are some that have just superior customer service here in the United States. Yeah, I can shoot an email to Equipment East, and I won't name the company, but if you know the name, you know the email, and you know the company, but they'll respond back in 60 minutes or less and say, hey, I'm gonna have a problem getting it there. Could I return it here? And as long as they don't have some big backup, yeah, sure, take it over there. We'll change it. Like that kind of customer service goes a long way, and it's great to develop relationships with companies like that.
Oh yeah, I mean we have a lot of issues here sometimes where, so you got in Charleston you have the 3 different ports, right? You got North Charleston, Wando, and Hugh Leatherman. Hugh Leatherman just opened and back up this year, and the volume isn't there. Well, sometimes it'll request for an export to be picked up to empty there, and you'll get there and they'll be like, yeah, we don't have any empties for, we don't have any empty 40-foot, high cube 40s here. But then you can't just, it's not like you just drive over to Wando and just pick it up from Wando. You got to call the steamship line. You have to have the steamship line update the EIR to now add in, and it's
got to update the booking, got to update the EIR.
Yeah, so it's like, it takes forever when you don't get a response and you literally have a driver that's sitting there that's less than 10 minutes away from the other port that needs to go over there and pick that thing up. And that's another one of those things where the steamship line and the terminal play off each other, and because one says they are not allowed to do it, where the other one says they are allowed to do it. So again, put them all in the same email. Can we get this updated pretty quick so I can come pick this thing up?
Yep. It's I'd actually just had this happen in Norfolk with HAPAG. I was going to pick up a helicopter that was being stuffed in a 40 high cube to go overseas, and HAPAG had no 40 high cubes in Norfolk or VIG. And so you're like, okay, now what? Like we can't just go to North Carolina and pick up an empty and take it back. So they wound up, I think they wound up off hiring from a location, and we went and picked up the off hire. But it's kind of crazy when you're going to pick up an empty, and they go, "Yeah, we don't have any." And I'm like, "It's the port of Norfolk. Like, how do you not have an empty 40 high cube sitting somewhere?"
We had our first one last week where we pulled into Wando, which Wando is usually the dumping ground for everything, right? North Charleston can be limited. Hugh Leatherman can be limited. North Charleston can be limited, but Wando's usually got everything. They didn't have, I think it was MSC, maybe it was Maersk. I forgot which one it was at the time, but they didn't have any 40-foot standards. And I was like, shit, if you guys don't have any 40-foot standards here, there can't be any in the damn country.
Right.
Like, where the hell are they all? So
you think about how big Savannah and Charleston are as ports. Right. I mean, it's Long Beach is 1, Charleston is 2, and Savannah's 3. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So to think about the second largest port in the United States doesn't have any 40 standards.
Yeah. But then to get through like you just said, right now they have to change the booking. I had to change it and get it changed to a 40-foot high cube, right? Takes a little bit. It's not like just a quick driver sitting there waiting. Had to adjust the dock time or the schedule for the next day because we ended up having to pick up in the morning.
It's even worse because most of your steamship line customer service people are overseas, right? Because Maersk is out of Europe. Hapag is out of Europe. Who's out of? There's one out of France. I forget. Is it CMA?
I don't remember.
But it's so much different than domestic logistics because you're not dealing with Eastern time versus Pacific time. You're dealing with Central European time versus Pacific time.
Yep.
And it can get kind of hairy, but again, I think personally that's what makes drayage fun for me is there's so many moving parts that it's a challenge, and I love challenges.
Well, it was the whole purpose, and a lot of our viewers have heard us tell this story before, but that's what started this show. And once you get it in your veins, like it's hard to get out of, right? Like I don't mind on the brokerage side doing some of the other stuff, but like we've kind of from the brokerage company that I'm with, that I use for the brokerage side of it, the agent program, like we're kind of like the division, the brokerage or the drayage division of it, right? Because we handle a lot of the drayage for them. And when Hunter and I first met on the Logistics Lounge one time, and if you've ever watched that show, you'll know that
never.
Hunter doesn't. Yeah, right. Hunter doesn't talk. Hunter doesn't talk a whole lot. Pedro does most of the talking on there. In this particular show, Pedro didn't say anything for like 45 minutes straight, and Hunter and I just talked about drayage the entire time. And Pedro just sat over there and didn't say a word. And that's what this conversation started about this show, because once I met somebody that actually enjoys talking about it as much as I do, and just the inner workings of it and the complexities and everything that go along with it, it's a drug, man. It's addicting.
See, you talk about the drugs and being addicting, but he's left us now, and now he's
still here.
He's doing rails of reefer LTL.
It's still in his blood. He can't forget about it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine who would hate themselves so much that they leave drayage to go to reefer LTL of all places.
Hey man, you got to learn it all right? And I've never left drayage, all right? It's still there. If someone propped a project right on my desk, we'd be having a different conversation. But
that's fair.
Can't say too much though. Certain things can't say on the air.
So I wanted to point out something I learned that you still learn every day. If you don't learn, you need to get out of the business, right? I'd been doing this a while, and I sent a quote off to a carrier, and they said, well, this is a grounded market. You're going to have a reposition fee. And I'm like, what do you mean a grounded market? And you would think that would be just common sense, right? But it's not. But to find out that there's no chassis pool in that particular rail yard, and you have to bring in a chassis from another rail yard 200 miles away. And so that makes your rate significantly higher. And being able to learn that stuff and relay that to customers, I think, is really important.
Well, and I think that, and then also the appointments, right? There's some port, like I'm fortunate here in Charleston that we can just come and go as we please, right? I mean, as long as the port's open. I mean, sometimes they'll have a dual mission, you got to be in by this time, but you don't have to make appointments, right?
Except for the reefer yard. I hate the Charleston reefer yard.
Yeah.
Charleston, if you're watching this, fix it.
Fix it.
Like it shouldn't close at 4:00.
Right. But at least you don't have to make an appointment to go in there.
That's
right?
fair. That's fair.
You know what I mean? And like, I can't imagine trying to run a schedule I mean, drayage has its complexities, drayage has its delays, but then on top of that, they have to make appointments on when you're coming in and coming out, either pick up or return an empty. Like,
And
yeah,
Well,
also,
dude,
if you're
it's like Long
independently
Beach too,
wealthy,
man. Like they'll only allow in like certain steamship lines. They'll only accept like empties or full containers at certain
oh,
times.
dude, it got
It,
so ridiculous during COVID. It got so ridiculous. Like just the stuff you would hear, you're like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
and
And
then
then
you
the
want to
very
talk
next
about
day,
detention and shit, dude, or per diem.
yeah,
Like, and the steamship lines are like, sorry, then you're just stuck in the water.
yep.
No pun
Dude,
intended.
I just had a 70 container project in LAX, and like we literally could not get appointments to pick the containers up. Like the system would show appointments, and you would go schedule it, and it would confirm your appointment, and then
Yep.
it would cancel it 45 minutes later and say that appointment's not valid. And you're just like you're beating your head against the wall. You've got lines shut down because of delays, and you're trying to get these containers out as fast as possible, and you're just like, like
right.
it's
And
something
you're
else,
telling the
man.
customer, and they just don't understand. They're like, "Well, go
It's
get
like,
it. It's there." And it's like, "I can't." And then you show them pictures, and they still
yeah,
don't get it.
nope. You're like, guys, there are no appointments. And then they were very intelligent, so they were in contact with the steamship lines and the ports and saying, hey, listen, you need to extend the last free day on this. If we can't get appointments, we can't pick them up. There's nothing we can do. And to their credit, the steamship line was really good about just extending free time till we could get them pulled out. So, but yeah, it's nuts to deal with. And every port has their own different requirements, right? Like, do either of y'all deal with the ports of Seattle, Tacoma very much?
Mm-mm.
I have
Okay,
once.
so here's a little free tidbit education lesson for you. The ports of Seattle and Tacoma require RFID tags. And the only reason they require RFID tags is so that they can monitor their turn times. They do not sell RFID tags at the ports of Seattle, Tacoma. The closest place a driver can get an RFID tag for their truck to be able to enter the ports of Seattle, Tacoma is LAX. Other than that, they have to be mailed to them, and it takes anywhere from 5 to 7 business days. So it's
a racket.
It's a racket, man. It's kind of crazy, but it's just weird. Like every port requires something different. Every port has a different appointment system. One of my favorite appointment systems in all of Drayage is the Port of Mobile, APM terminal. It is so easy to go in and schedule an appointment. Charleston's the same way. I love Charleston. It's easy to go in and schedule an appointment. The Port of Savannah, but I really wish like they could all get on just like one national system. That would be my Christmas dream.
Right. And you're talking about, and I don't know how other ports, because we mainly run out of Charleston, but the two things I would say that drive me nuts is one, you mentioned it, the reefer yard. The second one is customs exams. So you only have one trucking company that's allowed to dray out the containers that have to go to CES for exam. So you have to wait for that company to pick it up and to take it over there. You then have to wait for that company, once it's completed, to now bring it back. And if the last free day gets affected during that time while it's waiting, it now goes into demerge, and now the customer has to pay to get out. We had a customer that literally had to pay. By the time he got done messing around, he ended up paying like almost $3,500 in demerge. That it was literally a container that it first went into demerge before this particular carrier picked it up to bring it over to exam, because they dragged their feet on getting it out. So then we had to fix getting it out of demerge, so that then and pay for it, so that then they could pick it up and bring it over. Then once it got over there and it was done, it then had to get it then came back and it went back into demerge when it got here. So then we had to pay. So you ended up paying, I think it was like almost $3,500 for this container to get it out. And the sad part is this particular customer is part of this Reshore America project, so they only get like one container like a month, because it's the only thing he can't make over here. Yeah. Everything else for this particular thing he makes, he's built machines to actually build everything right here in the United States. It's just one container a month of this certain thing that he has to get from overseas. So for him to have to pay this, knowing that he's trying to actually get stuff built here and not have to use it, was just like a knife in the heart.
Tell him to go to Mexico, and then we can work together and make that happen.
Yeah, right.
Well,
what you got, Hunter?
Adam, we're getting close to this hour mark, but I think you're kind of touching on the story about, just kind of doing some crazy shit. So I know Steve loves this segment. What is your craziest story to date, or just like most memorable story in your drayage career?
Oh
so
God, there's been a ton, but the one that immediately came to mind is I had a competitor that had left containers in the port for like 45 days, and each container had like $35,000 or $40,000 in demurrage on them, and so the forwarder was just freaking out. Right, we need a solution to get these picked up immediately. This one has to go. Like, it has to go. We've shut down production. We have to get it picked up. And so we called down to the genset pool because it was a reefer, and they had no gensets in Savannah at all, period. And so I'm going back to the customer going, hey man, there's no gensets in Savannah. You're kind of screwed. He goes, I don't care what it costs. Figure out a solution. So I'm like, okay. So I wound up picking up a 40-foot chassis in Savannah, sending the driver up to Norfolk, renting a genset from Norfolk, bringing the chassis back to Savannah, loading the container, taking the container to Memphis, unloading the container, bringing the empty back to Savannah, taking the genset back to Norfolk, and bringing the empty chassis back to Savannah. And all in total, it was like a $17,000 move or something stupid like that. Like, just the amount of miles and all the accessorials and stuff, they didn't care. They're like, we had to get it delivered. And I felt bad, but we didn't make some huge margin on that either. I think it was like a 5 or 7% margin on it, just because I just, when you're talking something like that and you've got relationships with forwarders like that, you just don't want to gouge them.
Yeah, just want to get it done for them.
But putting that solution together, turn around, I mean, we got 35 more of those containers that had been sitting there. So, it pays off when you can put a solution together like that quickly and problem solve. It pays off.
That's nuts. 17 grand.
Yeah.
My biggest advice for brokers and carriers as you guys work together, and for anybody that follows me on LinkedIn, I just posted this today, and I'm not going to mention who the broker was, but there's communication is the key into this business, right? And when you're having to get stuff out before last 3 days, and you're trying not to, you're trying to move stuff around for customers to get stuff done, communication is key, right? And I find that some brokers will they'll send you over something, a quote that they don't even actually have. They're using it to get your quote so that then they can go on the load board or talk to freight forward or whatever and try to get the business. But just be clear with that at the beginning. Don't act like you have it, because then carriers are now setting their trucks aside, moving around their schedules to try to make this happen for you, and which is what happened to us yesterday. And then when it came down to waiting for them to finally send me the right kind of the container number after I moved the schedule around, because it was the last free day that had to come out yesterday, all of a sudden the broker ghosted us, and we didn't hear from them. And to this day, 2:00 on a Tuesday afternoon, I still hadn't heard back from them. Right, so just
transparency is key, right?
Like, transparency is key. Communication is key. Just be honest.
That's the thing. Like, you have so many of these big boiler room brokerages that basically teach people to lie in order to make margin and make a load happen, right? They post the wrong cities and states for delivery. They tell you it's a first come first served facility when it's an appointment that you got to make an appointment 7 days out. If you want to be successful in this business, have integrity. Say what you'll do what you'll say. It really is that simple. Yep. And you'll get carriers that trust you and build relationships with you. You'll get people that'll die for you to make something happen, even if it costs them, because they know that You have a relationship with them, and down the road, they'll make it back. And customers, it's just that simple. Like, don't hide from a customer. Don't let them email you multiple times, call you, and you don't return calls, or because you don't know what to say. Just say, hey, listen, I'm working on a solution. I will be back with you as soon as possible. Just bear with me. And it goes a long way to ease people's anxiety. All they're trying to do at the end of the day is keep their customers happy. And as long as you can communicate what you're doing to help make that possible, you'll be successful. You won't have a problem.
So that's actually a perfect segue as you think about integrity and you think about customer service. That goes into factoring too, right? A lot of our in drayage and in across logistics and trucking, right? A lot of people need that money today and not 30 days out. And that's why our sponsor, Shoreline Capital, when you talk about somebody that's great at communication, great and has integrity, you got an issue, you can contact the owner, Clint Weston, directly, and he'll handle it for you. We talk about the big boy brokers and the big company brokers, the big 3-letter brokers that don't necessarily, they teach their people to how to lie, cheat, and steal, right? Sometimes factoring companies are like that as well. And our friends at Shoreline Capital are just the opposite of that. They treat you like your family, the good kind of family that brings you over for Sunday dinner and treat you to a good meal. That's who the people you'll deal with Shoreline Capital. So reach out to Clint and his team at ShorelineCapital.com if you're looking for that kind of experience with your factoring as well. What about our friends at Pigtail?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about, controllables and uncontrollables and all the headaches that drayage can bring to you and the ports. And, one thing that you can control is flickering lights on your trailer. Okay, so the pigtail wedge, you never know what those plugins are going to be like with these containers that you're getting or these chassis that you're getting from these pools. So, the pigtail wedge, simple little tool there. You just connect it to your electric plug-in, slide right in, made here in America. So you can go to prodriverproject.com to get your pigtail wedge by Mr. Robert Patterson, driver by trade, pigtail by night. And use code Junkies for 10% off your order. It's just a beautiful thing. You never want to get shut down in these times because, as Adam was saying, those charges can add up. So, pigtail wedge, beautiful thing. But well, Adam, it has been a great conversation, brother. Glad to have you on, and you are officially a Drayage junkie now. So before we cut out, do you have any final comments? Let people know where they can find you and any plugs and updates.
Yeah, you could find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active over there. For some reason, I have people that follow me and laugh and comment on my posts, which I appreciate. I think it's really cool to develop a relationship. So I thank you guys for the opportunity to be here. Ship at SGL, ship at SGL.com. We get ship done. We're here to provide solutions for you 24/7, 365. So
if I can ever be of service, ladies and gentlemen, the solution guy.
If I could ever be of service, or if you're another broker and you need help, even if I'm not directly benefiting from it, if I've got the time, I will do my best to help point you in the right direction, see if I can help you develop. If you're interested in becoming an agent, give me a shout. I'm always looking for people who want to hustle and who want to work and learn. I'll provide leads and help you grow. Other than that, thanks for the opportunity to be on the show, guys. I will say one last thing. If you are independently wealthy, somebody please go open up a reefer storage yard in Charleston with 240 direct shore plug. I promise you, you will be rich.
Overnight.
But yeah, thanks for the opportunity, guys. Love being on the show. Hopefully look back to being here again sometime.
And if your bank needs a business plan in order to give you that loan to fund it, what was that website again, Adam, where they can reach you?
Ship at SGL.com.
All right.
Steve, you got anything else, brother?
No, I guess got to go try to redo the schedule because the port system went down today. So I got to redo that a little bit and change it up. But no, I'm good. Appreciate it. Adam, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, sir.
Guys, appreciate it. Twos.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Be sure to go to trucknewshub.com. Be on the lookout for some new truck pick stories coming live to you from Walcott, Iowa, the world's largest truck stop. But until then, everybody stay safe, stay junky, kick them cans, crush them cans. We'll see y'all next week.